Good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the unapologetically progressive Sunday morning political news show for our state. Our opening theme song is by Hoosier singer-songwriter Leslie Nuss, and my name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm broadcasting from Bloomington. This week, continued U.S. strikes on Iran, a new front opens, and the Pentagon lies about the consequences. Trump slaps tariffs on an already teetering economy, and America's public health system is in the toilet. Literally. In Indiana, Mike Braun goes nuclear, bipartisan corruption and private interests tighten their grip on Indianapolis Public Schools, all that and more. But before we begin, you know the drill. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall content. We don't have billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network refuse to hide important information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the right-wing to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. They don't need any help. If a paid subscription isn't in the cards for you right now, that's okay. You can still help out by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding our content to your people. Get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. You can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it is PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Now, let us welcome this week's guests, both returning friends of the show and a couple of our favorite people in the world. First, she's one of the original co-founders of Mad Voters and a pillar of community activism in the Muncie area. Chelsea McDonnell, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here.
I always love seeing your face. Really brightens things up on a Sunday morning. It's going to be a hot one later today.
I'm not looking forward to it. I did enjoy this past week, though. It was quite nice.
It was lovely. Don't get used to it. And then also let's welcome to the show this week the director and founder of Medicare for All Indiana and the state coordinator for physicians for a national health program. It is Dr. Rob Stone. Welcome, Doc.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me on again.
Great to have you here. Listen,
I'll try to keep my Tourette's under control and not scream obscenities. I'm going to do my best today.
Listen, the world for the last 10 years has given us all a little bit of Tourette's, I think, at least if you're paying attention. So let us go ahead and dig into this thing, and we've got a lot to talk about this week, but let's start where we've started many of the past several weeks, and that is in the Middle East. And this week, U.S. forces continued to escalate strikes in Iran, reaching 13 straight days of attacks before finally taking a pause last night. The campaign expanded from coastal strikes targeting Iran's naval and defense capabilities to sites deeper inside the country's interior, including civilian infrastructure. A strike last Sunday destroyed a water desalination plant, an agricultural water pumping station was knocked out, and communication networks have also been disrupted. President Trump warned that a power plant or bridge will be hit for every Iranian attack on shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Chelsea, that's a war crime.
Yeah, absolutely. And none of this is surprising, though. I mean, if we look back at the history that we have of destabilizing countries, this is all of the exact same stuff we've done over and over and over again to destabilize these countries, to get them to be desperate for us to come in and save them. So, I mean, yeah, it's every single thing we're doing there is a crime at this point.
Yeah, just par for the course for our country over the last 85 years. Unfortunately, I think, have all been sort of propagandized the way we've been raised and the way our media works. We're always the good guy, but my God, it wouldn't be the first time we committed some war crimes. Vietnam was full of them. Iraq was full of them. We have a habit of doing this again and again. So let me tell you something else we got going on over there this week. And Doc, I'm going to throw this one to you. But Friday night, video circulated of a burning aircraft crashing over Iran's Qeshm Island. Was it a U.S. fighter jet? A drone? We don't know. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps does claim to have destroyed at least 11 U.S. aircraft on the ground in the region, plus dozens of radar systems, missile depots, and command centers. The IRGC spokesman also claimed over 200 U.S. troops were killed, calling official U.S. casualty figures absolute lies, and challenged Washington to let journalists visit strike sites. And normally, you might chalk that up to Iranian bluster, but Pete Hegg says Pentagon has already been caught covering up the extent of the damage repeatedly in this conflict. Investigations by the Washington Post and CNN in May revealed that Iranian missile and drone strikes caused significantly more widespread damage to the U.S. Military bases in the Middle East than official reports acknowledged. And this week, lies about the human toll. The New York Times on Monday revealed that DoD didn't disclose 3 Iranian strikes on U.S. forces in Jordan the week before a July 18th attack that killed 2 soldiers. Those earlier strikes injured dozens of troops and damaged several helicopters, but only came to light after officials spoke to the Times anonymously. And Wednesday, another Times report revealing the Trump administration removed the names of U.S. troops from the Iran war casualty count. Doc, I do not trust a word out of our Pentagon.
Well, the old bromide is that the first casualty in war is the truth. This is taking it to a whole nother level, changing the names, denying the number of people killed and injured. That's a whole nother level. As far as I know, that even in Vietnam, those things were not distorted and hidden, although a lot of other stuff was covered up in that war. So it's just another one of those things where it's just like gobsmacked. How can they get away with this stuff? And where are the Republicans in Congress going to go? What are they going to say about this? And maybe they have said something to slightly hold somebody in the Pentagon accountable, but I'm not aware of it. It's just horrifying and depressing and disgusting, but then maddening. And when we get mad, then we've just got to take that energy. And I guess my question for everybody is, where is the domestic anti-war effort right now in the U.S.? I think we could do more.
Well, Chelsea, let me ask you about that. You've organized a protest or two in your day. Why is it that we're not seeing this major anti-war push? Is it because the official casualty numbers are relatively low? People aren't feeling it in their communities. Their loved ones aren't being affected. The economic toll, while severe, is not nearly as severe as it could be. Gas prices have been relatively low, all things considered, so far. I think it's going to get worse, but why are we not seeing it at this point?
So you hit on it. We are Americans. We are inherently nowadays very selfish. If things don't affect us, we tend to not care. But the other thing that we really have to take into account, because we do have a lot of people who are paying attention, including myself, Flood the Zone is working. They are hitting us over the head with trauma and crisis every single day, and people are tired. Yesterday, I never take naps. I wish I could. Oh, I would take them every day if I could, but I can't. My body doesn't let me. I napped yesterday for hours. My body was just, you're tired, you're done, just stop. And I think that there's a lot of people who are going through that, and they have a much harder time getting out of it than others. I have a lot of tools in my toolkit now, so I am able to get out of bed a little bit easier than others. But a lot of people are not used to this kind of crisis every single day. And you can't even get on Facebook. You can't look at the news, nothing, without just feeling so disheartened. And our hearts are just breaking into pieces every single day right now. And I think, unfortunately, something really awful is going to happen. Something, and I say that, and to me, all of the awful things have already happened. And I feel like I'm just doing the hardest geometry problem ever, and I can't figure it out. But I unfortunately think that it's going to have to get a whole lot worse before people really get up and do something.
And yeah, it's like, what do you protest, right? It's the Steve Bannon flood the zone strategy. Well, you got the war, you could protest that. You got the attacks on election infrastructure, you could protest that. You could protest the economics of it all. Like, take your pick. And when there's so much and it's so overwhelming, you kind of don't know where to begin. Doc, it seems like that's where that's exactly where they want us.
It's exactly where they want. And I just wanted to add one bit to, in Indiana, gas prices, yes, are relatively low, but they're also artificially low because of the suspension of the gasoline tax. Which means that the taxpayers are, even though they're saving a little bit of money for when they fill up their tank and getting the impression that gas prices aren't so bad, it's also bleeding the budget because it's a huge source of revenue that we've suspended. And that the Republicans are going to come back in the legislature and say, no, we've got to cut social services and social programs in Indiana even more, basically to pay for their political ploy of suspending the gas tax.
Yeah, you're going to pay for it with a broken axle, or if you get swallowed by a pothole. That's what pays for our roads and bridges. The governor says, oh, well, we're going to make it up by, replacing that money maybe from the general fund. Okay, well, great. Well, then we're paying for it in other ways because that money could be better spent on other things that actually improve Hoosiers' lives. But they've totally blown their shot. Most of this gas tax suspension in Indiana has been while there was a ceasefire over in the Middle East, and gas had been relatively low. He can't extend the gas tax any further without a special legislative session now that the war has come back online and gas is now, oil's back up over $100 a barrel. Oops, shot your shot too early. Let's stay on the war here and talk about the cost of things. And, while the Department of Defense appears to be concealing the human cost of this war, Pete Hegseth was on Capitol Hill this week, fudging the financial cost as well. He told the Senate Appropriations Committee Tuesday that the war has cost $37.5 billion, while requesting $87 billion more. Sources told CBS News the real cost is likely much higher, since the official figure excludes base reconstruction. Despite this, House Republicans passed a $95 billion supplemental spending package, including $60 billion for the Pentagon, and also passed the National Defense Authorization Act, signing off on a $1.15 trillion spending request that would also formally rename the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Both bills also threw in provisions of the SAVE Act for good measure as Republicans try to sneak Trump's voter suppression wish list in wherever they can. Both pieces of legislation thankfully face an uphill battle in the Senate, but at the same time, lawmakers were giving the administration what they wanted financially. The House also passed a new war powers resolution calling for Trump to stop military action in Iran. That one did fail in the Senate. Chelsea, it's confusing that the House is both simultaneously calling for an end to the war while also authorizing more spending on the war.
I wish that I could come back with an answer for you on why this is happening, but it literally makes no sense unless, because they know things we don't know. And that's what it boils down to, is that they're all going to have different reasons for doing what they're doing. And even if we think that they have a certain reason, it's probably a different reason. You can't trust anything that any of these people say. And they're not giving us any reasons either. I mean, they don't talk to us. They have no reason to talk to us. They already have the power. They already have the control. I mean, Spartz is my congressperson, and we never get any updates from her. We don't know anything that's going on. So, there's clearly people who are trying to satisfy other people, in my mind. That seems to be something that we're seeing, is people trying to play things a certain way, to get by on things. Whatever it is they're doing, they're playing a game, but they're playing a game with our lives. And that's what it boils down to for me.
Doc, what do you make of this? I mean, obviously, if some folks vote, if the war powers resolution passed, and this what do you call it? The spending package is also passed. That means at least a few Republicans voted yay on both of these. Like, put me inside their heads.
Oh, that's you're asking too much of me to go inside their heads. But I was raised in a conservative Republican family in Evansville, and my father was actually a Republican politician and held office in the Indiana State Senate and the Indiana House of Representatives. And so I grew up with a Republican mindset, and the Vietnam War changed all of that. But I just keep having the sense, my father's 10 years dead now, that even my father, who worshipped at the foot of Dick Cheney, I think would be appalled and angered and upset. And this is, I can't put my head in the heads of these Republican lawmakers.
Well, the Republican mindset has certainly evolved over the last 60 years, hasn't it? Even in the last 10. I mean, boy, I remember the Jeb Bushes and the Mitt Romneys, and for all their faults, of which there were many, there were no MAGA, they were no Donald Trump.
Yeah, another thing I'd like to say, I mean, when you talk about $1.6 trillion now, maybe the war is going to cost, the defense budget's going to cost, you're talking real money. And when you talk about bombing civilian infrastructure in Iran, at the same time, that money that's being spent on those munitions is bombing civilian infrastructure in the United States of America and in Indiana. I mean, the money that we're spending on this war is not being spent on healthcare, not being spent on housing, not being spent on public health. We could go on and on, but the truth is, the civilians are the casualties on all sides of this war, and it's happening right here. It's just we're a little more insulated from it. We don't have bombs going off at night in the dark around us, and Lord knows, I mean, we live still with huge privilege, comfort, and safety in this country, but this war is is taking all sorts of tolls that we don't yet really fully understand. Yesterday I saw that diesel in Bloomington's over $5 a gallon now. So that's going to have all sorts of effects on the price of everything. And it's just going to make life harder, make it harder to make ends meet all across Indiana.
I really like the way you framed that, Doc. That they're bombing our civilian infrastructure as well. They're our healthcare, our public health infrastructure, our voting infrastructure, our human rights, our civil rights. It's all being hollowed out here. There is no smoking hole in the ground, but it is a metaphorical smoking hole in all that is supposed to hold us up as a advanced rich society in the 21st century. Let's stay in the Middle East. And one more thing over there. So, with these, the most concerning thing over there might be the opening of a new front and the Saudis being dragged into this war. So Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen attacked a pair of Saudi tankers in the Red Sea on Thursday. This is their first strike since declaring a blockade of Saudi-linked ships through the Bab al-Mandeb Strait earlier this week. This strait has been an important release valve as Saudi Arabia had been rerouting oil exports that would normally pass through the Strait of Hormuz through Bab al-Mandeb instead. Of longer-term consequence, however, the Trump administration signed a 30-year nuclear cooperation deal with the Saudis this week, which could eventually let the kingdom enrich uranium domestically without agreeing to international inspections. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said in 2018 that Riyadh would build a nuclear weapon if Iran ever did, and experts warn approving this deal could prompt Turkey, Egypt, and others in the region to demand similar treatment, unraveling decades of non-proliferation policy. Listen, Chelsea, what could go wrong? It's not like the U.S. has ever armed foreign nations only to find those weapons later pointed in our direction. We've never been attacked on U.S. soil by a hostile group of Saudi religious extreme. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's nothing good about any of this. This is destabilizing everything. I mean, it was already destabilized. This is like, it's like being in an earthquake and then the volcano erupts as well, which is likely in an earthquake near a volcano, right? And that's how it feels. It just feels like we're on this shaky ground at all time. And then stuff like this. And you have to look at it from so many different ways, right? Are there people who are testing us? Like, are we being tested? Because we already know that there are a lot of people who are not afraid to die. Right? They feel very righteous in what they're doing, and death to them is just the beginning. Right? And so I always have to wonder, like, who's testing us and how far are we going to be tested before we make some major mistakes and put more American lives at risk? And we're at that point where I feel like no matter what we do, we're putting more Americans at risk. There's no easy way out of this. Like, excuse my language, we're screwed. That's how this feels.
Doc, I remember, during the George W. Bush administration, and they were trying to sell the Iraq war, and they were like, we don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud, right? And then if I remember previously before that, Iran was a U.S. ally with a puppet government from like the 1950s through the 1970s. A lot of the arms that were used, and still, I think they've still got some laying around, were U.S. weapons. If I recall, Afghanistan in the 1980s, when they were fighting the Soviets, we funded this little ragtag group called the Mujahideen. Some Osama bin Laden guy was a part of that. Gave these folks U.S. weapons. Again, giving the Saudis nukes? What could possibly go wrong?
And so the Borowitz report, left-leaning political satire this morning pointed out that we've gone very quickly. We pivoted from denuclearizing Iran to now nuclearizing Saudi Arabia. and they are, a regime known for slicing and dicing journalists that they don't like, and all sorts of horrible things. I don't know. We got Michael Beckwith here calling for an end to Islamic prayer in the United States, but we're answering the prayers in Saudi Arabia to put them on a clear path to have nuclear weapons.
Doc, I'm telling you, with the way things are going in this world right now over the last 10 years, we need all the prayers we can get of any kind. So let's turn the page, but my way in is going to be through this war, and with 2 weeks of escalatory strikes in the region and an important alternate route for oil shipments potentially cut off, the price of Brent crude spiked to its highest price since May, as I mentioned, topping $100 per barrel on Thursday, with experts worried it may climb to $120 or more. Gas prices rose above $4 a gallon, and major stock indices fell for the second straight week. So into this already slumping economy, President Trump announced new tariffs on more than 80 countries, including major U.S. trading partners like Canada, Mexico, and China. These new tariffs invoke Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, a labor practices enforcement tool rarely used before Trump's presidency, rather than the Emergency Powers Law the Supreme Court struck down in February for illegally bypassing Congress's exclusive taxing authority. And then Friday, Trump threatened more tariffs, this time on the European Union in direct response to a $1 billion fine leveled against Google for anti-competitive business practices. Trump also cited prior EU fines against Apple, Meta, and Amazon as part of a pattern he calls the bloc robbing American companies, vowing the penalties will be entirely reversed. Chelsea, tariffs in this economy, just what we need.
Aren't we asking for something like $12 billion to help farmers that were affected by tariffs? Isn't that happening? Like something like that? So what are we doing again? Because the tariffs haven't helped anybody. It's only made things worse. And this is one of those things, like when we're talking about how we don't understand why people aren't upset, like even something like this, I'm like, I have a pitchfork, like, let's go, take it to the streets. This is crazy. Yeah, everything could go wrong. And what are we doing? We're just going to go back and forth with everybody constantly. Like, I don't like what you did, so we're going to make people here pay more. What? And the fact that people aren't seeing exactly what this is and what this is doing and how every single bit of it's coming back on us. I don't understand it. I mean, the economists and everybody, they're putting information out there constantly. I want to implore people, read, and don't read people's websites. Read from professionals, the people who know what they're talking about, who have been training for this for years. I mean, they're on it. Just listen to them instead of Trump and random weird people. I mean, we're listening to some weird people.
And Doc, this it's not gonna stick either, right? They're like digging deep into the playbook, looking for any potential way in to level these tariffs. I don't know. He's become convinced that this is the best way to run an economy, like it's the 1890s. He's a big fan of the McKinley economy, but we saw this previously this winter. The Supreme Court says, hey, you can't level these tariffs using this other provision without going through Congress. It is their job with the separation of powers to do things like level taxes, and tariffs are a tax. They're going to wind up striking this thing down too. And now I'm sure there's like a grace period where they can put these things into effect and collect all these tariffs. Well, last time he did this, then he had to issue refunds. So what happens is, or at least what happened then, was the price increases get passed on to the consumers, and the refunds wind up going back to the businesses. The refunds don't ever make it back to us.
Yeah, and just the whole idea I mean, there's a lot there, but one of the things about how they're protesting the Google fines and the previous Apple fines and stuff. It's just that Trump never misses a chance to bolster the billionaires. They're the winners always, and so but it all trickles down the same way. So the tariff refunds go to the companies. The consumers never see a penny of it, and the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And then the total bizarreness that Trump is one of the tariffs on that Trump wants to punish Canada with is for the smoke, the smoke from Minnesota and Ontario that came down the East Coast the other day. But now, the skies are blue today, and so we're probably not going to hear about the smoke tariff for a while. But in some ways, it's as if they're just flailing to do anything so that we can't come back to the Epstein issues, which is billionaires again. But on the other hand, it's like we know that Trump's mind is not sharp enough to think of all this stuff, but we know there are these people like Stephen Miller who have his ear, and all these other people who are devilishly smart, and they're finding ways, like Chelsea said, flood the zone, just overwhelm us with things, so that we're just always back trying to figure out, how do we respond? How do we pull something to unify all this? And it's easy it is unfortunately easy for me to despair. Luckily, I've had practice working for more than 20 years now for healthcare reform and universal healthcare. So I'm used to getting beaten back and being disappointed. Geez. And somehow it always comes back to me that the antidote to despair is activism, it's work, it's sharing, it's and working with people like you two. It's the relationships and the people, because it's going to be the people that are going to save us.
And you're talking about working together and building coalitions, and that's how we're going to save us. But I do think in the end, it's going to come down to shameless self-interest that is going to pull us out of this thing, because the economy is doing so poorly, because people are feeling things in their pocketbook. When it affects you and your family and your kitchen table and your bottom line, Chelsea, that's when people are really going to get activated.
Yes. And as an activist, it's kind of my duty to harness the power of that, right? I'm aware. I know what's going on. I know how to organize. Now, I just have to look for the opportunities with everyday people to expand on their knowledge and get them involved. I spent this past week at the Delaware County Fair actually painting faces in the Delaware County Democrats tent for free, because as we all know, especially if you're a parent, the fairs and festivals, you can't afford those. So we're trying to offer free things because it's free and we can get families in. So as these people are coming in to get their kids' faces painted, most of these people aren't even voting. And so I'm talking to them about the things that are affecting them. I'm sitting there painting a little girl's face and I'm looking at the mom, hey, how's childcare around here? And then she starts talking about, oh, I can't find quality childcare for my kid anywhere. Like every place is full. There are no places that are qualified. And you get an opportunity to say, well, this is why this happened. And did you know that we have this much in our budget, but we still have a childcare crisis? Like being able to pick up on how people are suffering and then giving them the information that they need to understand why they're suffering and then to take action on their suffering. That's what we sit here and wait for. That is our duty. And then as people become more in the know, as they start talking, as that information is flowing, that's when the real organization happens. But we have a duty, those of us in the know, we have a duty to look for the opportunities to educate and pull people in. Because if they're just listening to the propaganda, well, I'm the enemy. I hang out with Democrats and progressives and, I guess you can call them communists if you want to. I hang out with a lot of those leftist progressive people, right? And we're the enemy according to some places and people. And really, we're the ones, we've always been the ones, the people in the lower and lower middle classes, we have always been the ones to save lives. It has never been the government. It has never been the people at the top. It hasn't even been some of the higher middle class people. It has always been the lower class systems that have relied on each other to stay alive. And that's, I believe, how it's always going to be in this kind of capitalist society. And so that's where we are. That's what we're doing.
And, you know, kind of back to the flood the zone strategy, Doc, they want us working so hard and just struggling to tread water and to you know, barely keep ourselves afloat, that we don't connect those dots, right? The economic dots. I'm thinking of the fair Chelsea's talking about. You go, you know, and you're there, and a tenderloin and an elephant ear and a lemon shakeup all cost more because the folks that run those fairs, you know, their costs have gone up for food, for fuel, as this war has dragged on, and diesel prices, like you mentioned. And you know, the gas prices that folks are paying to get there. Everything is more expensive, and we have to be able to tie all these things back to, at the national level, Trump and his poor decisions, and here in Indiana, Governor Braun and the Republican supermajority and their terrible economic decisions.
So is that a question? So let me comment. The environmental movement kind of coined this term NIMBY, not in my backyard. And so initially, as the environmental movement was growing in the 60s and 70s, people would say, oh, you know, it's just because it's in your backyard that you realized that something was wrong. But anyway, we can get people engaged. And really now, you know, I think about this in terms of healthcare. Even if you have, so quote, good insurance, which usually means you've got health insurance, but you haven't gotten sick yet to actually put the insurance to work. But people with, even if you've got good insurance, so-called good insurance, and you're supposedly happy with it, you know it. It's in your backyard. You have grandkids and uncles and grandparents. You know somebody who's had healthcare nightmare experiences to talk about. And so you've got to understand how it affects all of us. And it's the same way with everything. And so they're flooding the zone, and we've got to kind of come back and connect these dots. Easier said than done. Down here in Indiana, I'll go on for not too much longer, I hope, and because I don't think I talked about this last time I was on the show, but they've done analysis of the counties in Indiana's 9th district. So that's from Bloomington down to New Albany. And except for Monroe County, where I live in Bloomington, with the university, it's kind of a separate ball of wax. All the other rural counties in the 9th district, the data it's publicly available data. In every one of those counties, between 45 and 55% of the people living in those counties are recipients of Medicare or Medicaid. So approximately half the people in all those counties are already recipients of Medicare, Medicaid. And then if you add in the people who are on the Affordable Care Act and getting subsidies, that's from the government, or people who would get their coverage through the VA, that's from the government. In every county of rural southern Indiana, and it's probably true throughout the rest of the state, more than a majority of the people in those counties have guaranteed government-sponsored insurance. And in many of those counties, it's over 60% of the people. So how do we reach those people? How do we connect with them and say, you've got to vote for your self-interest. This is your real self-interest here, to protect healthcare, to protect Medicaid, to protect Medicare, and to protect the Affordable Care Act, all of it. It's all part of the same process.
It is, and it all comes back to follow the money on these things. Hey, speaking of the money, let's move on. And you know, one of the only things propping up this shaky economy has been massive investment in AI. Though Google's stock tumbled this week, even though they pulled in massive earnings because investors are worried about their $45 billion in AI spending, which may never pay off. But beyond the potential financial sinkhole, AI comes with existential risks as well. And a scary development along those lines this week, Tuesday, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, announced that 2 of its models broke out of a controlled testing environment and successfully hacked into Hugging Face, a widely used AI code library, while OpenAI was testing the model's cybersecurity capabilities. The models escaped their sandbox by finding an unanticipated vulnerability, then targeted Hugging Face because they inferred it might hold clues to help pass OpenAI's evaluation. And while the AI models themselves are now cheating on tests, apparently the Trump administration doesn't care if the data centers that power them cheat on emission standards. The EPA held a hearing this week on a proposed rule that would hand states full discretion over public participation requirements for minor source air permits. Low regulation states like Indiana could let data centers install dedicated gas plants and diesel generator clusters with little to no public notice. All of this high pollution power infrastructure is supposed to prevent data centers from outpacing the electric grid and driving up utility rates for residential customers. Governor Mike Braun joining 22 other governors Thursday in signing Trump's ratepayer protection pledge, though it should be noted the pledge is voluntary and self-enforced. Chelsea, we're building Skynet. Right. Again, what could go wrong?
Oh man, I've been saying this since the beginning, is that this is so dangerous. I mean, I read books growing up. I read so many books, and there were so many books that talked about this kind of stuff. And I mean, yeah, they were like, supposed to be fun, but it's not fun. I read this story early in the week, and I was absolutely shocked and scared, honestly, because it's just think about somebody having that power getting into the wrong hands. We get our stuff stolen, information gets leaked. There's just so many things that could happen. I mean, if they're capable of doing stuff like this, they're capable of getting into our information and just destroying our lives. And how fast could that happen before somebody even knows about it? Like all of a sudden, all of our information and our bank accounts and all of this stuff is released into the public where predators are just waiting to get their hands on it. It's just incredibly dangerous in general. And, when it comes to these AI centers and the data centers and stuff like that, like it is so important for us to keep talking. I want to come at this from the campaign manager part of me. People do care about this. They don't understand what's happening and they want to understand. So it's very important to talk to people about this and to use simple language and explain to them what a moratorium means, because what we're doing when we're going door to door is we're asking people, what do you know about these data centers? And when they're like, I really just don't, we say, okay, well, all we're asking for is for people to get behind a moratorium so that they, the people, could hear from the professionals firsthand. We have the ability to do testing, to do everything that we need to do so that you have the information. And if we talk to people like that and we keep it simple and we just say, we just need more information, people understand that. And they're like, yes, I agree. So we need to watch our language around this. And instead of just being like, oh, no data centers, this is bad, we have to use language that people understand and help them understand that they deserve to know. Because now, like you said, we have all of this stuff happening where they're trying to make it to where they don't even have to inform us of these decisions. Like, I can't remember where it was, but recently there was a meeting and nobody was even aware of it. Like they didn't have to make anybody aware of it. And they were able to pass all of this. It was like a commissioner's meeting and they did all of this stuff and nobody knew about it. And now everybody's upset and they're like, well, we have rules. And because each municipality, each area can have their own rules with this stuff. I'm asking you, go to your local government and talk about a moratorium. Get people in your community to sign petitions. We can do this because people care, but you have to keep talking about it.
Yeah, you're 100%. And, one of the, a couple of the major things about these data centers, and the reasons folks don't want them in their neighborhood, Doc, is because, one, the infrastructure investment that is going to need to prop them up, well, that price gets passed on to the consumers. We've seen our electric rates in this state go up like nearly 20%, overall, more than 20% in some parts of the state. And then this ratepayer protection pledge is supposed to mean that, data centers will be installing these gas and diesel generators to make sure they don't need to draw on the grid. So, utility rights might not go up, but all it costs is our health in terms of the pollution that gets put out by these things. Like, people don't want these in their neighborhoods for that reason.
Not in my neighborhood, not in my backyard. And this is a really a uniting issue across party lines and across the country, and apparently overseas as well. And so this is one where, maybe this whole AI infrastructure has overstepped its bounds. Let me take a sip here. I'm a little scratchy. And they use a lot of water too, and then the final product, is a big box that is really noisy apparently, but only employs a minimal number of people. It's not like we're giving the original thing for getting this whole business of giving tax breaks to companies who might relocate to your community. It was supposed to be that this was going to be a source of employment, and so then those people would then become those employees would support the tax base and all these kind of things. But in this case, these things are going to be built by out-of-state construction companies, and they're going to be staffed by a handful of people on site in the county, maybe just a night watchman outdoors, I don't know. But they're not, and they're going to be noisy, smelly, sucking all sorts of resources out. So, and it's all basically to support the AI billionaires. So, yeah. It's in my backyard and my community. These are some dots that I'm glad to. And one of the great things about this is that a lot of this stuff has just risen up spontaneously. I know some of the people in Monrovia who've been fighting the data center there, and people from all across the community came together and said, "Whoa, wait a minute." And they've been holding meetings on this for for about a year now. So it's another way to look at, how can we pull people together, because it's going to take the people to stand up and fix this thing.
Well, and they sell us this bill of goods like you talked about. Let's connect those dots. They say they're going to come in, they're going to employ lots of people. A lot of times they bring in out-of-state labor to build these things, and once it's up, it employs a security guard and a Roomba. It doesn't employ local people. It drives up our electricity costs. It's loud. It causes noise pollution. They take up a lot of water, and they're building a mass surveillance state, and potentially the destroyer of all humanity. Chelsea, again, what could go wrong?
Again, I read a lot, and there are a lot of books that talk about this too. I mean, we're talking the flock cameras, right? I don't know if you guys have seen, but so Michigan City, Indiana, they have like a flock camera revolution happening. Yeah. I mean, there are people, they are planning, dare I say, scheming. They're doing what needs to be done to take a stand against this ongoing police state. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm watching it, and I'm taking notes, and because this is really serious. People, they don't understand. Like, the thing about our government is that we're supposed to be allowed to stand up to the government. We're even supposed to be allowed to take down a tyrannical government. Like, we as Americans are supposed to have that right? We have the right to come together. We have the right to our militias. We have all of these rights afforded to us by this government who is literally putting things in place so that we can't do those things. And
yeah, it'd be a shame if all those flock cameras, most of which are like powered by these solar panels, if their panels got vandalized, they don't work anymore. That'd be a shame if that sort of thing would happen. That'd be a real waste.
Oh, yeah, I mean, because, well, and I want you guys to think about it like this too. Those of you who are listening who are like, oh, I don't understand, the problem with this. Well, there's a couple things and something that you need to think of. This does affect your pocketbook. Who do you think is paying for those? You're paying for those. And then you're paying for the upkeep of those, and you're going to be paying for the processing of those and the data management of those. Like, we're paying for this, and they're going to keep getting destroyed because I'm here to tell you, Americans aren't having it. So you're just going to keep paying for it. And then there's going to come a time where it gets worse. And then what are you going to do? Then you're not able to get away with doing it. I mean, really, what are you doing? Plus, we're seeing people access this information that were never supposed to have access to it. There was a flock camera company, and what was it, like the CEO or something was able to get into, I want to say, like some kind of a daycare facility or some kind of a facility. I saw that
it was like a children's like gymnastics thing or something.
Yes. Yes. So he was able to get into that and look in this room where there are children doing gymnastics. And he was never supposed to have access to that. And while they're investigating it, they're saying, okay, well, there's no wall here. There's no wall here. And basically what they're saying to us is anybody can access this. And
we've seen cases of police using them to like stalk exes and things. There are all big can of worms with the flock cameras and the AI that powers them and everything else. But let us move on. But I want to stay on the power front in a way. A few stories this week about utilities in Indiana. So on Thursday, Governor Braun selected Joby Jarrells, chief counsel to the Attorney General's Advisory Division, to fill a vacancy on the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. This is the fourth commissioner Braun has appointed to the 5-member board since just December. So now he's got an entirely friendly, politically aligned body overseeing things like the nuclear energy gambit that he announced last week. Braun launched the Indiana Advanced Nuclear Ready Community Program to introduce counties to small modular reactors, aiming to build local support proactively rather than let developers announce project first. This is the same dynamic that has triggered these data center moratoriums in nearly a third of Indiana counties. The technology remains unproven at scale. No small modular reactor project has ever been completed in the U.S., with just one under construction nationally down in Tennessee, despite state and industry claims about affordability and viability. The pitch centers on Indiana-Michigan Power's Rockport site, where coal units are retiring. And listen, getting rid of coal power generation in favor of carbon-neutral generations, good idea in theory. One of the other Indiana electric monopolies, AES, on the other hand, is under a purchase agreement to be acquired by BlackRock. This week, a group of consumer advocates, Citizens Action Coalition, Public Citizen, and the Private Equity Stakeholder Project filed a complaint with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission seeking to break up the private equity behemoth if the purchase goes through. BlackRock and its affiliates would control over half the utility, far beyond the 20% ownership cap set by the FERC. Doc, small modular nuclear reactors, unproven technology. It is the question of the show. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Yeah, after the Vietnam War, so I'm an old guy, so I like to talk about the old days. And yeah, my pivot then went to nuclear disarmament, and then it went to nuclear power. And I was living up in northern New England then, and they were building a nuclear power plant off the coast, or on the coast of New Hampshire, called Seabrook. And so that was a big part of the early 70s for me, was figuring out how to band together in citizens action to close the Seabrook plant down. But it kept going. It's had its problems. All sorts of unforeseen problems came up there. And so, yeah, the nuclear power stuff it's so seductive in some ways. Oh yeah, I mean it's pollution free. It just burns uranium. What could be bad with that? We've, yeah, oh yeah, there was the reactor that got flooded by the tidal wave, Fukushima in Japan, but yeah, Indiana's far away from tidal waves now. Of course, we've got tornadoes, and how these sites the nuclear waste, completely unsolved problem. The stuff stays radioactive and toxic, measured in millions of years. It's there's so many problems, but it's this seduction of technology, and of course, who's going to benefit from the nuclear plant? Well, General Electric and the billionaire class are going to benefit. I just don't see any good in this. Again, these things, if they're built, they're just going to be these little targets for international terrorists to hit, because if you blow it up, then it's like dropping a nuclear bomb there. And they're going to be, again, very few employees. I like that, a night watchman and a Roomba. There'll be a few more employees here. And then I'm trying to remember, what was the name of that nuclear plant in the 70s that they were going to build in southern Indiana, actually very close to the town of Rockport, that Citizens Action played a big part in. Do you remember? You guys are too young.
You're my go-to on that stuff, Doc.
There was I wasn't living in Indiana at that time, but there was a plant. Oh gosh, it'll come to me. That they started to construct, actually not very far from Rockport on the Ohio River, and then it was shut down partly because of citizen action, and people in Evansville who I knew got very involved in this. But yeah, there's no good in this one.
Wind and solar are right there.
Yeah.
And they're cheaper than any of this stuff. Nuclear is very expensive up front, but they're now cheaper than coal. They're cheaper than natural gas. I mean, China is eating our lunch on renewable energy, and in a post-oil world, which hopefully comes sooner rather than later, do we want to be left behind on that? But Chelsea, let's talk about the electric utilities of it all. And I feel like I'm repeating myself every time we have this conversation here, but not only is a private equity firm like the last group of people we would want running our public utilities, but they shouldn't be owned by investors at all. These are public goods that should be owned by the public.
100%. And, I've been warning people about the IURC for years, and I say that with absolutely no satisfaction that they've proven me right every single time. Sometimes you get a little satisfaction out of that. I get zero. Governor appointed, right? What could go wrong with that? Question of the show. There's a lot that we need to change to be able to address this stuff. That in itself, the governor appointments that we have really take us for a ride. And then on top of that, just like you said, the private equity, what can we do to change that? Well, our legislators can change that. And so once again, this goes back to education and taking action. We can't change any of this unless everybody gets on board with changing this. We all know that it's wrong. We all know what happens when they're buying up our utilities and our resources. We get charged more. We get access to less. They want to divert our natural resources. So like Doc said, the billionaires. They're going to constantly divert those resources to those people to use them against us. Legislation, please and it starts locally. Talk to your local government first and work your way up the chain, but don't stop. This is a worthy cause. My utilities have gone up so much, and I mean, I'm not doing anything different. I still have the same amount of kids. We still have the same amount of laundry. We're all doing the same stuff, but I mean, it's gone up $200 a month. And right. And like, I think I'm one of the lucky ones. I've had people tell me theirs have gone up 300 plus a month. So we have to do something, and it starts with us. So educate yourself, reach out to the legislators, and just keep chomping on that rope, because eventually it'll give, but it takes all of us. But I mean, those are my thoughts.
Private equity is a big problem, not just in the utility sector. They've eaten much of the value in the economy on the whole since the 1980s. I blame everything that's gone wrong in this country over the last 50 years on Ronald Reagan. But let us move on. And, these big investor-owned utilities are some of the biggest campaign contributors to our elected officials, which in a sane society would be corruption by definition, but in modern America, it is perfectly legal. So it should be no surprise when we see things like the next couple of stories, and it is a bipartisan affair. First, on the Republican side, quote, Indiana's public access counselor is supposed to ensure transparency in government, but under Governor Mike Braun's appointee, Jennifer Ruby, it has become far more difficult for Hoosiers to challenge government secrecy, an IndyStar investigation found. That is a quote from the paper's article, which will be linked in the show notes. You can find that on progressiveindiana.net later this afternoon. Now, Ruby's complaint response time averages nearly 250 days, more than 3 times longer than her predecessor, despite state law requiring opinions within 30 days. She also sides with the government 2/3 of the time, twice as often as the guy before her. In one case, Lebanon reporter editor Maria Flora waited 314 days for an opinion on a county contract dispute, by which point, quote, no one cared anymore. That's kind of a flood the zone strategy in its own way, right? But Democrats can do corruption just as well. IndyStar also had this one. The Indianapolis Ethics Commission, entirely appointed by Mayor Joe Hogsett, has met just once in his decade plus as mayor, and that single 22 meeting conducted no official business, and the attendance was voluntary. One current commission member didn't even know he was on it until reporters told him. The commission only reviews actionable written complaints forwarded by Hogsett's own Office of Corporation Counsel, meaning the mayor's office effectively gatekeeps everything that even gets to them. The Star's records request for complaints filed since 2016 came back empty after a 3-month wait, and the office found, quote, no record of an actionable ethics complaint, even regarding the well-documented self-dealing and sexual misconduct of former Hogsett advisor Thomas Cook. Chelsea, I guess I'll let you tackle the Republican on this one. This public access counselor is supposed to provide government transparency. If I recall, Governor Braun ran on government transparency as one of his main campaign issues, and this is his hand-picked person in the office, basically putting the kibosh on any requests for information at all, and or taking forever to litigate the requests, by which point the principals are uninterested or no longer care, or the issue has since passed by.
Right. And there's no way to check this power. This is what happens when you are in a Republican supermajority with Republican-held offices, Republican-appointed offices. There is no power check. There is no way to check this. It's It's outrageous, but it's a story of our lives, right? I'm in Muncie. Our mayor ran on transparency. He is about as transparent as a prison door. Our governor ran on transparency. Same thing. Our president ran on transparency. He was going to root out the corruption in government. He was going to release the Epstein files. Everything was going to be out there for us all to see. I mean, it literally, this is their game at this point. And we're all aware, especially in Indiana, that this has been kind of a long game for the Republicans. So like, this is kind of, I feel like, one of their final positionings, right? Like, they played the long game. They got people in positions of power. They started getting people appointed. They started cutting back on the laws that require them to do certain things or have power checks for them. And now they've got somebody in place that doesn't even look into the complaints, doesn't even, the ethics committee, all of that. They're not even doing what they're supposed to be there to do. So it's a dead end for us. And they did this on purpose. This was exactly how it was supposed to be played. And this is one of those things that, like, I think we knew was going to come, but we weren't focusing on it. Like, it wasn't kind of like oh, that's the person that's going to do this. But now that it's happening, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, duh, what did we expect?
Well, Chelsea, you correctly identified that this is a problem in a supermajority situation where, you can't really hold the folks accountable. There's no minority party to like put pressure on them in the legislature. But it's not unique to Republicans, right? Doc, I mean, we see in Indianapolis, the Hogsett administration is just as corrupt as any Republican administration could possibly be. But I think it's because they have, in their own way, a safe seat in the big cities. They tend to be safe Democratic areas, just as the rural centers tend to be safe Republican areas. And wherever there is a lack of competition, you see corruption.
Scott, no, wait a minute. I mean, I'm just so reassured that the ethics committee has not needed to meet in Indianapolis. Don't you believe it?
No, we've seen these.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You are exactly right. It's the same thing. Indianapolis is controlled by the Democrats, and they are proving that they are imperfect as well. And I'm glad this is being exposed because there've been. The Hogsett administration's had a number of concerning things. I don't usually pay that much attention to Indianapolis news, but you kind of can't miss some of this stuff. And when you were talking about the governor appointing people to the Utilities Commission, same thing has happened now that the governor appoints everyone to the Indiana University Board of Trustees. And they're consolidating power. They're making sure that dissenting voices are not heard, and it's part of this larger process. And then there are these kind of disconcerting rumors that I hear that some of the money coming into Indiana politics on the Democratic Party side is perhaps tied with Apollo Global Asset Management and billionaire class folks, and not supporting and explicitly not supporting more progressive Democratic candidates. Now, that's kind of all rumor stuff, and we may not want to really go down that road on the radio today.
Well, actually, Doc, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I want to go right down that road. So, there was one case this week of shady Indiana dealings getting caught, right? The campaign of Republican Secretary of State nominee Max Engling was forced to return a $60,000 donation from Hoosier Leadership for America, the Jim Banks-aligned dark money group that spent over $5 million attacking GOP state senators who opposed Trump's redistricting push. Dave Shelton, who lost the Secretary of State's race to Engling at the Republican convention in June, filed a complaint alleging the bank's protege illegally accepted the donation. Hoosier Leadership for America is registered not as a political action committee, but as a nonprofit corporation. And corporate entities are allowed to keep their donors secret, but their contributions are capped at $5,000 per candidate. PACs have no contribution limit, but must disclose their donors. So, Doc, you can't have it both ways. And, here you have Republicans policing other Republicans. I guess you like to see that.
Well, I mean, it is good to see that party splinter a little bit. And this one was particularly interesting to me, the Engling story, because it's become, the whole Secretary of State race has become kind of a shit show, and the Republican Morales was forced out essentially, and then the former mayor of Indianapolis, Ballard, has apparently gotten on the ballot. He was a Republican, now he's an independent. And then the Indiana Democratic Convention supported Mr. Bai in the heir of the Bais, and he seems like a very attractive candidate. And I hope that he will share the money that he brings into the state up and down the party, and not only favor the more so-called moderate Democrats and over the more progressive Democrats.
Well, about that money, Doc, that you hinted at it, that private equity money coming in is going toward the Bai campaign, and he's sitting on a massive fundraising edge, by the way, like lapping Engling. And gee, Chelsea, it would be nice if the Democratic candidate in the race would return some of his unsavory contributions like Engling was forced to.
That would be nice. And I think the important thing to understand here is that those concerns are not going to go away. We are finally, I think, at a time in our society where we as Americans are feeling strong enough to finally be like, no, this stuff is it's not okay. Like, we're literally watching our friends and family die right in front of us. We've got people getting murdered in the streets by federal agents. Like, we're done. The corruption, and like, we all are aware of what's happening now, that money is controlling us, that if you don't have money, you don't have shit, and you don't have a say in shit either. And I think that we're really starting to finally see that, because I've been heavy into elections for the past several years. This is the first time ever that this has been such an issue. Like, I know that we've been like talking crap about APAC candidates for a while, but I have never seen something of this scale of people just being like, APAC, no. And it's not going to stop. It's just going to keep getting worse and worse. And something that I want to say to the people out there who are listening, who agree with this, that the money does matter. It matters where that comes from. Don't let them tell you you're wrong. We know that we're right about this. And you can, and this particularly is for people who identify as Democrats. You can still be a good Democrat and hold other Democrats accountable. You do not have to swear fealty to a party to a point where you don't hold them accountable. If you've got a chair or a vice chair that is doing something horrible, abusing women, abusing animals, you say something. This is just as bad and just as corrupt as the things that touch us close to home. Taking this dark money, you have a hand in something bad. Hold people accountable. Do not let them make you feel like you are bad at what you're doing. You are a bad Democrat. You are a bad progressive. We know what's right and wrong, and we know that where the money comes from matters. We track it, we trace it, and then we throw it back in your face, and we let you know this is not okay.
We discipline our children because we need them to know the difference between right and wrong, and we want them to do well. If we didn't care, we'd let them get away with murder. We fight because we care. We hold our electeds and our hopefuls accountable because we care, because we don't want this corruption to persist. You mentioned President Trump running on transparency. Well, he is transparently corrupt. And if there's any silver lining of the Trump era, it is that the corruption is so overt and so blatant that it is drawing people's ire across the political spectrum. We're tired of our political system being bought. Speaking of our political system, a couple elections I wanted to talk about this week. Now, in Arizona, they held their primaries Tuesday, choosing election-denying MAGA wackadoodle Andy Biggs over relative moderate David Schweikert to face Democratic incumbent Katie Hobbs in November's gubernatorial contest. Biggs and Schweikert both gave up their U.S. House seats to run for governor, triggering competitive primaries in both districts. And Trump endorsed Mark Lamb, whose campaign was marred by an allegation he threatened a woman to conceal sexual misconduct, won the primary for Biggs' safe red seat. And former NFL kicker Jay Feely won the GOP primary for Schweikert's seat. What did Peyton Manning say? Idiot kickers. On the Democratic side, mixed results. Representative Greg Stanton, a well-established centrist, survived a primary challenge from Kai Newkirk on his left in the 4th congressional district, while progressive Amish Shah won the Democratic primary in the 1st district over DCCC-backed Marlon Galan Woods. In Maine, Democrats yesterday chose Troy Jackson at a special nominating convention to replace disgraced U.S. Senate candidate Graham Plattner. Jackson is a 5th-generation logger, a former state Senate president, and a progressive who will carry forward much of Plattner's populist platform without all of the personal baggage. Chelsea. Arizona, I think, sort of mirrors what we're seeing here in Indiana. You've got that progressive versus establishment kind of dynamic going on within the Democratic Party there. We've seen it take place all summer through primaries in New York, Colorado. Michigan's a big one coming up here in a couple weeks. Where are we headed as a party?
The August 4th elections in Michigan and stuff, like, I think that's going to tell us a lot. And I say that about each election coming up, and it's very clear that each state has its own thing going on. I mean, Indiana, in my opinion, is unlike most other states in what we have going on politically, and just how hard it is to get progressive candidates to do well here. Now, we've seen it. Jackson Franklin went up against J.D. Ford. And something that I want to say about that is Jackson Franklin was an unknown. People had no idea who this guy was. Was he local? Yes. Did he work on some campaigns? Yes. But people didn't know him. I didn't know him. And I'm from Muncie. I know everybody. They introduced us, and we were able to take Jackson from this unknown guy to winning 2 counties in the district. And I mean, Delaware County by a lot. He did really well. So we're seeing, if you put the work in, if you really push, we are making progress. We are moving in the right direction. It's going to be a lot harder in some areas than others. Indiana is one of those. But the good part about this is we can use these numbers to push the candidates that win in a better direction. People got behind Jackson for a couple of reasons. The Medicare for All was a really, really, really big one. And we were able to get that as part of our platform at the state convention this year. So, but have you heard anything about it? No, we're not hearing anything about it. So we're really, the Democrats and the establishment, they're really trying to hold their place here and really trying to push back on these progressive policies. But as we're seeing in these elections, people are behind this stuff, and maybe they're not completely behind the progressive candidate just yet, because a lot of these progressive candidates are brand new. That is a really, really big reason why some of these progressive candidates are not winning. It's because they did not have footing in their communities beforehand. They can change that with this first run. That is now changed. People know the name, so keep going. That's the first thing. But they know now that we're getting behind these progressive policies, and they can run, but they can't hide. So I think we are seeing major improvement across the country. Like I said, maybe not winning the elections now, but we have so much power behind us now. Hey, you know those 4,000 votes the progressive Jackson got in Delaware County? You want those votes? Okay, well, what's your message? This is the message he won on. Will you make this part of your message? And I'm telling you, it's happening. You may not be hearing about it, but behind the scenes, we are pressuring the hell out of these candidates. And I know if it's happening here in Indiana as hard as it's happening, there's no way it's not happening hard as hell in these other places too. We're done.
Yeah. Yeah, and Doc, if you look at Maine, I think Democrats there made the right choice yesterday at the special convention. Troy Jackson was a well-known name in the state. He was a former state Senate president there, has the credentials and credibility, and yet he's going to carry forward the unapologetically progressive message that the highly flawed Plattner rose to prominence on. So and with all of these folks, it comes down to the message. It comes down to the policy. You cannot fall for the personalities. You have to take everybody in this line of business with a grain of salt. But I think generally that Jackson and the policies he supports seems to be the right guy there. Can he beat Susan Collins in November?
The Plattner issue was a pretty interesting one for me to watch, because I admit that I found Plattner a very attractive candidate. The way he talked, he just seemed really authentic, and I think he was when he was talking policy. And the fact that he was deeply flawed, it turns out, in terms of other parts of his life, I was glad that things worked out the way they have, and would, of course, love to see Susan Collins go down. But the fact that, again, Maine, it's a state not in some ways not that different from Indiana. It's a little more bluish purple than reddish, but they had that crazy MAGA governor, Paul somebody,
Paul LePage.
Yeah, but I mean they've elected some real nutcases, and so maybe we can learn some from them. And Chelsea, I'm so glad you brought up that that at the Democratic State Convention, the Medicare for All resolution, and I know some of the people from Northwest Indiana who were some of the leaders to get that thing. It passed overwhelmingly at the convention, but that did not this year translate into any change in the Indiana Democratic Party platform, but a lot of groundwork was laid there. And so these ideas, and for me, I always come back to plug Medicare for All, because it's not actually a left-wing idea. It's a very conservative, traditional, build on the past idea, because Medicare is such a great, it's the best part of our healthcare system. But
fiscally conservative too. It would save a lot of money, right?
It would save money. It would save lives. It's a win-win. It's philosophically, economically, it's easy. It's just the political lift, because the billionaire class is dead set against anything that's going to cut into corporate America's profits.
Ain't that the truth? So, and Jackson in Maine is a proponent of Medicare for All,
yes.
And good to see that be carried forward on that in that race after Plattner was forced out due to sexual misconduct. Hey, speaking of sexual misconduct, President Trump spoke at the White House Correspondents' Dinner Saturday night in Washington. Recall, the event originally scheduled for April was rescheduled after a would-be assassin attempted to breach security at the Washington Hilton, injuring a Secret Service member, but getting nowhere near the dining room where dignitaries were gathered. This Saturday night, Trump's speech was an hour-plus rambling mess where he insulted reporters and political opponents alike, and closed by donning a Trump 2028 hat and joking about running for another term. He's not joking. The best part of the night, though, Trump had to sit and watch as Wall Street Journal reporters Khadija Safdar and Joe Palazzolo bad with my Italian, received the Katharine Graham Award for courage and accountability for their coverage of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. CNN's Wolf Blitzer, presenting the award, detailed the pair's findings, noting that Safdar's personal address was exposed in a $10 billion lawsuit Trump filed against the reporters, forcing her family to relocate, at which Trump smirked and shrugged. And another former Epstein associate, however, smirks no more. In France, Daniel Sayad, a modeling scout who recruited women for Epstein, was found dead at his home in Paris Monday. He was under active French investigation for rape and human trafficking, appearing in over 1,000 of the Epstein files declassified by the DOJ. He also worked for Jean-Luc Brunel, an Epstein-linked modeling agent who died by suicide in prison in 2022 while awaiting trial on similar charges. Gee, Doc, all the guys associated with this Epstein guy, they just wind up dead, don't they? Epstein just winds up dead. It's very, very suspicious. Oh, you're on mute, sir.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah, the Epstein stuff, and coming back, of course, that is tied in with Leon Black, with Apollo Gold Management, and with the guy, not Leon Black was not Evan Bayh's benefactor. It was the other guy who's now the head of that billionaire.
Oh, Evan Bly worked for Leon Black for like a decade before Apollo forced out Black, and now Rowan is the new benefactor.
Yeah, Rowan's been his more direct contact. But yeah, there's connections to this Epstein money and the billionaire class everywhere through society, and you got to appreciate the Wall Street Journal for doing some investigative reporting. The New York Times, which I can be critical of at times, has also been very actively pushing, trying to keep the Epstein thing in the news. And so it is such a deep morass, and yet so far, the Justice Department has kept still a significant amount of this data hidden, and I don't know when that's going to break, but I'm sure they are just desperate to try to keep it out of the news as much as possible. I used to count on watching Stephen Colbert to allow me to kind of listen to Trump speeches with commentary and not have to watch the whole thing. So I didn't watch the speech to the correspondence dinner.
Unwatchable, absolute train wreck. He bombed in a friendly audience. He bombed. No one wanted to hear what he had to say. But this Epstein stuff, Doc, and you sort of got at it a little bit. It is bipartisan, and I think part of it is that there is international intrigue and maybe espionage involved, and that's why reporters are just beginning to scratch the surface on this thing. They have sought to cultivate relationships with powerful and influential people in politics on both sides of the aisle, in industry, in technology, throughout any powerful and influential sector. But Chelsea, at the dinner the other night, I don't know if they served dinner, but a bit of just desserts were served to Trump as he had to watch these reporters get that award right in front of him.
Yeah, and these are the moments that I try to tell people, like, really take it in, like, enjoy it, let it be a win. He had to sit there, and he knows exactly what he did. He knows exactly what he did, and all the weak men across the world that he has by the balls because he knows exactly what they did. They're all shaking in their boots while they're watching it, right? And so get some satisfaction out of that too. We're catching on, and we're catching up, and we're scratching the surface, and soon we'll be into the thick of it. And I have every hope that we are going to get to the bottom of all of this. What I would like to see is reparations. That's what needs to happen. We need to see reparations. And I'm a reparations believer, like all across the board, from the beginning of our country to the disappearing of immigrants. Like, we owe reparations across the board, but like something like this, the thing that really upsets me is the Supreme Court and how they basically gave him immunity for like all of his actions as president and stuff like that. Like, and they twist this stuff. So how are they going to twist this so that we have to just fight harder and harder and harder to have accountability for these things? Well, I don't care. I'm going to keep pushing for it. We all need to keep pushing for it. Talk about it as much as you can. Because I mean, we haven't had anybody even arrested. And like you said, either these people are being murdered or they know that they were wrong and they can't face those consequences. So regardless, we're dealing with bad people, and we need to keep dealing with this problem. It's not going to go away. And I hope that they know that.
I seriously doubt we're ever going to know the full truth of this thing, but there certainly must be some truth and some recompense and some amends made for all of these things, to these victims, to the other victims of state crimes done by this country, for sure. Let us close the last quarter of the show here today with a couple local stories, and I want to start here with education. And this week, the private school industry really tightened its grip on the public schools in Indianapolis. Thursday, the Mind Trust, an Indy-based charter incubator, announced Edward Rangel will join the organization as chief program officer. Now, Rangel is the founder of another charter operation, Adelant Schools, and sits on the newly created Indianapolis Public Education Corporation's board in one of the 3 community member seats. Now, the IPEC board is supposed to consist of 3 IPS board members, 3 charter school members, and 3 community members. And here you have a clear school privatizer taking up one of those community seats. The Mind Trust's founder, David Harris, chairs the IPEC board, which this week also chose their first executive director. And it's another school privatization advocate. Carrega Rausch, former CEO of the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, was selected Wednesday. He will oversee transportation and facilities decisions for IPS and most Indianapolis charter schools under this new oversight framework. And public school advocates in the capital city are having hurdles thrown up in front of them. Lindsey Cornett, a District 4 candidate for IPS board, is fighting a ballot eligibility challenge. Excuse me. I'll be speaking with her on the Who's Left podcast in the coming weeks, but something does not sit right here, and it may be connected to the charter champion Mayor Hogsett's people staffing the elections office. So, Chelsea, your thoughts, and both you're in Muncie, Doc's here in Bloomington with me, but I do pay attention to this Indianapolis school situation because they are very much a canary in the coal mine. They are the example for what Republicans in the state and all too many Democrats like Mayor Hogsett want to do to privatize our public schools.
Right. If they can get away with it in Indianapolis, they can get away with it anywhere in Indiana. And I mean, that's what it boils down to. And that's what people really need to be paying attention to. When I saw this past week, these appointments, I was just absolutely shocked. I mean, conflict of interest after conflict of interest. And it's like you said earlier, the corruption we're seeing is just so brazen and so outright that sometimes I have to take a step back, read it again, just to be like, am I reading and comprehending this properly? Because my brain is I have explosions going off. Like, how can this even happen? But I mean, this is just a continuation of our charter school chaos. I mean, we've already given so much power. And, I've been on your show before and even got in trouble one time because of my thoughts on charter schools, because I am somebody who believes that there is a place for charter schools in our country. I just don't believe that they shouldn't have the same oversight as public education if they're going to get public funds. If they're not going to get public funds, that's a completely different thing. We need to work that out. But while they're getting public funds, we need complete and utter oversight, just like we do our public schools. But no, I see this as being a really big problem. We're seeing the Union School District, for example. We saw them get shut down. And people don't know this, but that was one of the most wealthiest school districts in Indiana. And they didn't even have a lot of schools. It was online schooling. They offered a really great online schooling. And so people from across the state took advantage of that. Well, now they've shut that down. Now all of this money is going to go into other places. They're just looking for more ways to funnel money into charter schools and into private schools, because that's where those kids had to go. There are no schools in that area. Charter schools, private schools, that's your only option. Take away the online schooling, boom, all that voucher money is now in those charter and private schools. So it's just going to be a continuation. It's like they've got dominoes set up and they're just, letting them fall. And we have to step up and continue to push our representatives to hold the line on this. Indianapolis, I don't know what's going on, because I see y'all fighting. I see you showing up and I see you doing the work, and they're not listening. And what do we say to that? Even as an activist, I'm going, you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. So you just hold the line, keep showing up, keep fighting back. Eventually, we will get people in these places of power who will do some damage control. But in the meantime, stick in there.
And Doc, the charter school, Chelsea said there's a place for charters. Maybe there's a place for private schools in the state, but I am a firm believer in public money should go to public schools, period. And but I also see where parents in these districts where the public schools aren't doing so well, now certainly they're going to want to find the best option for their kids right now. Right, their kids right now, maybe not having that historical perspective that the reason the public schools aren't doing great is because they've been kneecapped by bad decisions made at the governmental level by folks that wanted to get to this point where schools are privatized. I don't know. Where do you fall on this thing? What should we be doing? And does it matter if we make that historical connection for folks? I mean, they're going to want the best solution for their kids now, regardless.
So my perspective goes back to my childhood in Evansville, where my parents sent me to a private elementary school. And I remember, this is a long time ago, civics discussions about how my parents were still paying their property taxes, which is what supports education, and they were paying the private tuition, and then my parents, remember, were conservative Republicans, and they said that's right. We've chosen to spend some money to send our kid to the private school and went to the public high school afterward. But the idea was it's democracy is better if people are well educated. But the schools, historically, it seems to me, have been caught in some complicated storms. And part of the start of it was that the teachers' unions are very strong, and they tend to be dominated by the Democrats. And so attacking teachers' unions was a way for Republicans to gain power in the broad fight against anti-unions that started with air traffic controllers. So the whole Reagan era of attacks on teachers was because they wanted to weaken the teachers' unions. But then the Tea Party came along in 2008, or was it 2010? And so the Tea Party then got all these very conservative folks to run for school boards and to start trying to push back that way. And then the evangelical Christians grew off of that movement, and then they said, well, let's let us have religious schools that get taxpayer monies, which is absolutely violates the separation of church and state, but they've gotten away with it. And then the last leg of this octopus coming against the public schools, and there's probably still even more, has been that the private school systems, the charter schools, have been taken over. There's a lot of private equity that has moved in there too. But I will give a plug. So Bloomington has a charter school called the Project School, which was community started, community based, does great work. My grandkids went there. So, I mean, it's good to have an option, but I'm strongly in support of public education because it's what makes democracy strong. And I'm strongly in support of public education because, it's good for all of us.
And let us all remember the roots of the school voucher movement are directly in the backlash to the Brown versus Board of Education in the 1950s. Sure, it's evolved since then, but has it really? So I want to maybe step up a level from K-12 here and talk about higher education a little bit. Fun story this week. So IU adjunct law professor Elizabeth Booker Houston sparked backlash this week after posting a video delivering a congratulations cake to Senator Lindsey Graham's office. His sister has since been appointed to fill his seat, and Booker Houston saying to Graham's sister that her brother was in hell, and congratulations on your new office, but condolences for losing your brother. Now, Houston is a part-time professor. She only earns like $5,000 a year. She teaches one class at IU. It's remote. She's never even been on campus. But despite that, the usual suspects in Indiana politics, including Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, are calling for IU to fire her or lose state funding should they refuse. IU law professor Steve Sanders said while the video is, quote, stupid and dumb and juvenile, Houston likely can't be fired, citing her First Amendment protections and, the ensuing lawsuit that would result should she be fired for speaking her mind in this particular case. Doc, funny, tasteless? What do you think? A little bit of both?
Maybe a little bit of both. I haven't actually, I saw a picture of the cake, but I didn't get into the whole thing. But yeah, in the aftermath of what's his name, who was assassinated?
Charlie Kirk.
Yes, yeah. A whole lot of people who were fired or beaten back or fined. They've all gotten, I don't know about all of them, but the ones I've heard about have gotten some justice. And, Micah Beckwith, he's got no redeeming social value as far as I can tell.
He is not one to speak about, running one's mouth off. For sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I certainly hope that we're not going to lose any ability to have some tasteless humor in the public sphere, because people who are funny are sometimes the most threatening, though, to the powers that be.
And Chelsea, I believe, right in your area, Dr. Stone mentioned the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk assassination. I believe there was a Ball State employee who got fired for making a comment about Kirk, which was not nearly as tasteless as this current gambit by Booker Houston here at IU, but she received a settlement, an undisclosed settlement. That is public money. Essentially, Ball State is a public university. So, is this just an end run to defund Indiana's public universities by having these payouts after we sue or after we fire these folks and then they sue us?
No, I just think they don't give a shit about our money. I mean, but yeah, I mean, she got a $225,000 settlement, and I'm sure the people over at the ACLU are just looking at the news every single day, waiting for something to come up about this, because they're going to jump right on it, and as they should. I mean, and that's the thing when we're talking about us taxpayers having to pick up the tab for everything. I mean, we literally pick up the tab for everything. They mess with us, we sue them. That's still our money. It's so cops are brutalizing people, and then we pay for their medical bills, and we pay, it's just absolutely crazy. And it's just kind of this crazy abusive cycle where some of us have First Amendment rights, some of us don't, but we get them back eventually, just not in the form of being able to say something without something coming back at us. We just get a check. So it's like, there's still, it reminds me of Dr. Caitlin Bernard, right? Even today in 2026, that poor woman is still probably receiving death threats and stuff like that. So it's like it's coming at us from all directions. Like, we're getting fired. We've got people sending us death threats. Her name is out there forever now as a baby killer. I mean, it is just horrific, and we need to be protecting our teachers and anybody who is working in our educational spaces. Just so that, I just want to throw this out there. BSU also did eliminate several of its positions, and these were all liberal arts positions. So just BSU is not learning. Again, they're just writing checks. They've got the money.
And excuse me, you see the same thing happening here at IU too. This is very much in line with Republicans' plans for higher education. They want, and anything that can foster critical thinking, they want out. And these are the people, ironically, that are supposed to be free speech warriors, right? They always talk about how much they are First Amendment absolutists, but God forbid you criticize one of theirs, they call for your job immediately. So. Let's go to our final story this week. And, Doc, I always like to dig up some medical stories when you're around and get your perspective on these things. And sometimes I have to dig. And sometimes, like this week, they are served up to you on a plate of lettuce. Don't eat the lettuce. So we've seen this cyclospora outbreak, which is now, I believe, expanded to over 40 states, linked maybe to Taylor Farms, but we don't know because there was this recall issued by them. Apparently, the FDA found that it was their facilities that this outbreak arrived in, but then it turns out they rescinded that recall after Taylor Farms founder visited the White House. Wouldn't you know? They are big MAGA donors, and so now this lettuce, maybe, we think, is the source of the outbreak. This cyclospora is now, been found in, well over 30 cases, hitting Michigan and Ohio the hardest. Causes potentially explosive diarrhea, which can last up to months. So you can't eat the lettuce, and you can't eat the eggs either, because we are now facing a salmonella outbreak as well. At least they are down in Texas. Midwest Poultry Services recalling about 1.6 million eggs from its Texas farms over possible salmonella contamination. These have been sold at stores throughout the South: Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, and New Mexico. And this lands among other agricultural crises down in Texas. They've got their cattle industry under strain as screwworm infestation has been found recently. That is something that had been eliminated for decades and just recently came back into the United States after Doge and RFK Jr.'s CDC quit monitoring these sort of things. And along those lines, measles is now at a 35-year high in 2026, already surpassing last year's total and well surpassing any prior years. This current wave goes back to a January 2025 West Texas outbreak. that grew to over 762 cases and caused the first U.S. measles deaths in over a decade before spreading to Utah and South Carolina and Pennsylvania and Virginia, with new outbreaks emerging in other states as well. Doc, you couldn't have seen this coming, could you?
Yeah, it's oh my gosh. Yeah, the destruction of our public health infrastructure is horrible and breaks my heart. And measles, I've been around long enough that I saw cases of measles when I was in my training in the 70s. And then that was after the vaccine had been introduced, but before it had really been widely accepted. But I remember taking care of a child at Denver General Hospital in about 75 who had measles encephalitis, meaning measles in the brain. And that child survived, but was left with significant brain damage and seizures. And so people, they've kind of forgotten how horrible a disease measles is. There's other diseases like that, but the whole thing with RFK and supposedly his Make America Healthy Again campaign, there's parts of it that I'm really interested in, and that I think are maybe some fresh air. But the way he's going about it are just terrible. And so all the anti-vax stuff, I think vaccines need to be held up to careful scrutiny, and we should be careful about anything we do. But the general move in the federal FDA and the Department of Health and Human Services is kind of moving away from anything that's really good preventative medicine. So we don't really know where this cyclosporosis thing is coming from, and this whole kind of flail about what was the actual source, and was it Taylor Farms or not? And then this guy paying off things is terrible. And of course, it's on the heel of all these other things: the screwworm return that you mentioned, the salmonella in eggs. And so, what's going to happen the next time? We know there's going to be future pandemics. There's going to be influenzas that are really deadly. Who knows what the next COVID thing may do. And so we need to have really good public health for all of us, for all these reasons. The head of public health in Indianapolis for many years was a wonderful physician, Virginia Kane. And I went to hear her speak once at an Indianapolis Business Journal breakfast. Not a place I go all the time, but this was actually in about 2010 or so, and so it was a big breakfast downtown Indianapolis, mostly pretty conservative people, and Virginia spoke to the group, and and Dr. Kane said, "How many of you here have had interactions with public health this week?" And a few brave little hands went up, but people kind of like, "Oh, I don't know. That's like, you mean you're talking about syphilis and sexually transmitted diseases or something?" Well, that is a big part of what public health has done, is get sexually transmitted diseases under control. And so Virginia held up her water glass and said, "Now, who here has drunk tap water this week? You have interacted with public health." This is basic civilization, the triumph of keeping toilet flushes out of drinking water. This is basic stuff. Public health starts at this most basic stuff, and then it goes on to the really sophisticated work of tracking things like foodborne outbreaks. And of course, everybody who comments on the cyclospora, you just can't. It's too tempting. And Scott, you couldn't resist the temptation. Too tempting to go to the word explosive diarrhea.
Listen, if I've learned one thing in my many years, Doc, it's that everybody loves a poop joke. But Chelsea, Dr. Stone mentioned that he was at this luncheon and with a bunch of conservative folks, and isn't like prevention like one of the most conservative things you can do? Isn't catching things upstream and preparing for the inevitable a conservative, prudent thing one should be doing, in catching things before they happen instead of dealing with the fallout later? I don't know. What do words mean anymore?
Nothing. Not when it comes from them. I mean, and you would think this is like every single representative we have, you would think that that would be the ultimate goal, right? But you bring up the terms harm reduction, which all of this falls under harm reduction. It all does. And they just, it's like a buzzword. Oh, no, we can't let people be okay. Public health to them is very different than what it is to us now. I wish that I could say what I even think public health would be to them, but I don't think public health is a concern at all. I think their health is the concern. And, look at RFK, right? Like what he thinks babies are made in the placenta. What is public health anymore?
If you expose the population to the cyclospora, then it will strengthen the herd and everybody will develop immunity to it.
I would believe that was a quote straight from him.
It is the world is upside down. It was the theme of the show, right, is what can go wrong. And when you take away public health protections, when you take away early warnings, when you dismantle the infrastructure of a once healthy society, this right here is what can go wrong, and it can have explosive consequences. So let us go ahead and wrap this thing up for the week. Doc, where can folks connect with you online, learn about you, learn about Physicians for National Health Program, Medicare for All Indiana, all of that good stuff?
So one good place to go is the national group that I'm very involved with, Physicians for a National Health Program. But all you got to remember is pnhp.org. And our basic grassroots and bedrock issue is that we want to expand Medicare to cover everybody. We got to take care of everybody. I think expanding Medicare is probably the best way to do it, although obviously Medicare itself could use there's some ways to improve it and as well as expand it. And so our group, Medicare for All Indiana, can easily be found on Facebook, just putting in Medicare for All Indiana, or on Substack, it would be Medicare for All Indiana, all one word, .substack.org. No, .com, excuse me, substack.com. So those are the ways to track me down.
Very good. And we will also tag you in today's show notes over on Substack and link to the Facebook as well, if I remember. Chelsea, how about you? You are active online. Where can the folks get a hold of you and connect? And I know you're managing a campaign there. Maybe tell folks about your candidate and how they can help him out as well.
Well, first of all, get on over to Muncie. We've got lots going on. I'd love to have you with us. So I am helping a candidate, Phil Gift, District 35, Phil 435. You can find us on Facebook. We'd love for you to get involved. But honestly, get a hold of me and I can help you connect with any of the candidates in your area. I am somebody, I will always be honest, and I never say anything out loud that I'm not willing to say to somebody's face. So feel free to reach out to me, ask me questions, and I will make sure that you get the information. I am on Facebook, so just remember the name Chelsea McDonald. You can send me a friend request or follow me, and I'm here to help you out and help you navigate Indiana politics.
Chelsea is one of our state's real unsung champions and heroes, and I just want to thank you for all you are doing out there to, improve your community and all of our communities, either directly or indirectly. So,
I appreciate that.
as for me, I will not be in Muncie anytime soon that I know of, but I will be here in Bloomington today, hosting what we're calling a "While You Were Out" town hall for our Congresswoman Erin Houchin. She was invited; she won't show up. I will be moderating that event, so folks down here in Indiana's 9th district can come voice their concerns, frustrations, questions for her. We'll make sure she gets them one way or the other. That will be at 3 p.m. today in the auditorium at the Monroe County Public Library. I've got a busy week ahead of me. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m., a special episode of the Who's Left podcast. I will have independent candidate for Secretary of State Greg Ballard with me live, and interested to hear what he's got to say. That is an unusual race for certain here in Indiana going into November. And then Tuesday, another independent, Sean Steele, running for State House in District 65, centered down there in Bedford, just south of me. So tune in for both of those if you would. Over at progressiveindiana.net. We'll also be on Substack Live and on YouTube. And you can find me online on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Send me a DM any of those places with feedback, or email me at scott@whosleft.us. And we can't do what we do without you. Please support our work with a paid subscription at progressiveindiana.net, and follow the network on social media at the full spelled out name, Progressive Indiana Network, on most sites. But on Blue Sky and TikTok, it is PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Once again, thank you to Chelsea and to Dr. Rob for joining us today. Thank you for watching and listening. Donate and volunteer for the candidate of your choice in your area. Like, share, comment, and leave a review for us. Let's keep building a radically democratic Indiana together. Until next time, I am Scott Aaron Rogers signing off from Bloomington. Love each other, Indiana.